Hey everyone, it's me, Ben, or GNC Centric. So before I start the video, I have a mic! Because a bunch of you complained about the sound, with good reason. Um, and also, I have a Patreon. So if you would like to support me and you can afford to support me, I'll put the link in the description. Once I get to 20 patrons, I'm going to do a live Q&A. So look out for that. Or patronize me if you want to get that happening. So today's video is going to be about how I manifested my transition. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, it started when I was like 13. Started watching YouTube videos and Tumblr, following people on Tumblr who were trans. At that time, I was anorexic, and just the summer before, men had started whistling at me on the street and stuff like that, and that creeped me out so much. So I think it was a combination of a few things. Also, I think being abused at home, transition was a way of controlling my body and my environment, kind of. I don't know, but transition seemed like freaking amazing to me. So I would watch transition, like I would find somebody's transition YouTube channel and like binge all their videos in one day, like 10 hours of videos. I would follow somebody on Tumblr and I would read all of their personal posts in one day. I was just so obsessed with these people who it looked like they looked like a frumpy, dorky kind of normal female before, and at the end they looked like a buff, beautiful man, and that to me was amazing. So I really wanted that, but I couldn't verbalize it or like come to terms with it for a while. So that was a couple months. Um, then I just stopped wearing regular bras and started wearing sports bras. Uh, that's not really like a big part of it, but yeah, that happened. At that point, I was kind of feminine. I had like a collection of different lip glosses. I had different like hair products. I really hate makeup. I think it's my ADHD. I can't have things on my face. Um, like same thing. I don't really wear jewelry. Like I just can't have things on me. So yeah, I was never into makeup. But like the year before, I had switched to a school with a uniform, and I remember getting like 5 kilts and 5 French cut 3/4 length women's blouses. So like I would look as feminine as possible in the uniform. Um, yeah. Then I cut my hair. So what I did was I grew my hair super long, well to me super long, and cut it off, donated it to be made into wigs for cancer survivors. And at the same time, when I cut it, I dyed my hair green, not all green, but I had highlights, and I had got it was a pixie cut with a rat tail. Um, yeah, that was the first time I dyed my hair. And then I literally dyed my hair for like 10 years, from like 13 to probably 20, I guess 7 years. But yeah, so that was lime green at that time when I had the rat tail. Then, after much research on Tumblr about like bone structure and fat distribution on the face and stuff like that, there was a bunch of people who wrote long posts about what kind of haircuts are good with what kind of facial structure to help you pass, stuff like that. So I finally decided I wanted like an emo boy, Justin Bieber type haircut, um, which I got. I think really I just wanted to be able to hide behind my hair as much as possible while still having short hair. So because it covered like all of here, like it covered like a lot of my face. Um, and then I dyed my whole head like aqua, and then green and purple. Yeah, I would dye it lots of different colors. Um, Next, I created like a queer social media. So in it, I put that I was a closeted FTM, female to male transsexual, and I started posting like, "Oh, I experienced dysphoria this way," and people on Tumblr would reply to me like, "Oh, you have our sympathy. We've been through that. We know that." Like sending me gifs of cats and stuff. Um, So it was the first time I could really like be my true self in front of people. Um, then I searched for a name, which was pretty time consuming. It took me a few months. I had like um, I had a note on my iPhone, and I would open it almost every day and like take names off and add names to it. Um, so at first I thought about masculinizing my birth name because I really like my birth name. It's original and I like the meaning of it, but the masculine version seemed really weird to me. So then I thought like, oh, my family. What are my family names? And my dad and his family, they most of them passed their father's name down to their firstborn son. Um, my dad didn't have any sons, at least not at that point. And so I thought like I should take that name. But then I felt like I would be stealing it because he didn't give it to me, and he's super Christian, so I knew he wouldn't be on board with me transitioning. So that felt like a bad move. Also, it's my dad's name. It felt like not my name, you know. Then I went for the cultural stuff. So my dad's German, so I looked at some German names, and my mom is half Scottish, half French. There wasn't any like French names that really pulled to me because I already kind of had a French name. But a lot of the French names I liked, they were kind of like unisex, so I was like, that's useless. Because when you're trans, you want your name to tell people right away if you're male or female, so that if they can't tell right away by looking, it gives them like the last clue. So the name I finally decided on was Ewan, Ewan, like Ewan McGregor, because it's like yew wood, which is the softest wood. I'm kind of nerdy about wood. And then, like, yew is a soft wood that changes, and I felt like I'm transitioning. This is like a change in my life. Um, but the problem was I grew up in a really Korean area and went to high school in a really Korean area, and Yuan is a girl's name in Korean, and that sounds too familiar or similar to Ewan. So I decided it was impractical. Um, so then I chose Ben. Throughout this process, I realized that names don't really like belong to people. There isn't like a name out there that's destined to be your name. You just have a name and it becomes yours because you live with it. Because I was looking for a name that I would feel comfortable with or that I would feel connected with, and like it doesn't really happen, at least not for me. So I just ended up choosing a name that I thought was good, and then like living with it, and then over time internalizing it. Um, yeah, by this point, I had leaned out of the feminine side of my wardrobe towards the masculine side, so stopped wearing skirts and stopped wearing like really like feminine cut shirts and stuff like that. But now, I was 14, I started to really wear like men's clothes. So we would go to the store, my family, my sister, my mom, and we would like split up and then meet at the changing rooms and then go to the cash and buy stuff. So we would split up, and I would go to the men's section and get men's stuff, and we would meet at the changing rooms. My mom would see me trying on stuff, and she was always like, "Why are you wearing men's clothes?" And I had like a list of reasons ready all the time. I was like, "The pockets are bigger, it's cheaper, it's better quality, it's more comfortable, it's warmer," like a bunch of stuff I had ready to go for why I needed men's clothes instead of women's clothes. Um, she asked me a lot of questions, but she was never like, "No, you're not allowed to get that." So that was okay. I'm just gonna quickly, over like the next like 2-3 years, I went through this phase where I was obsessed with baseball caps for a while because again I thought it was angular and gave my shape, my face like definition. Um, Also something to like distract from my face or hide behind, I guess. Um, Sorry, I wrote stuff down. Oh yeah, I got into this weird thing of spitting on the ground because I thought it made me look more masculine. And then also I started wearing boxers. This doesn't seem like a big deal maybe, but the first time I ever wore boxers in public was it was to write an exam at my high school. My high school took exams so seriously. They were trying to prepare us for university, but they were like way more stressful in high school than they are in university, which is kind of funny. Anyway, I remember going to this exam. You have to be in like perfect uniform, and I wore like these thick fleece boxers under my pants, and I had to sit for like a 2-hour history exam or something. And I just remember being like uncomfortable and sweaty the whole time because they're like fleece boxers. Anyway, I eventually got like normal like boxers that are like thin, and uh, the problem was my legs when they rubbed together, like in the middle, they would slowly, like, boxers would ride up and eventually give me a wedgie. So I learned to walk with my legs farther apart, which makes me look like I have like a man walk. Like, people have told me I look like a man. Um, I remember when I was 16, I went to a family reunion for my father, and they were all very strict Christian. So before the reunion, he was like, "Okay, I'm gonna take you guys to H&M. You're gonna pick out outfits that are like appropriate or whatever, and I'll buy them for you, and you wear them to the reunion." My sister and I were like, "Okay." Um, so I bought like a really high neck dress, and I remember putting on the dress and walking around, and like I had tailored my walk so much to wearing boxers that walking in like tights and a dress felt so weird to me. And I remember like in the washroom at the event, there was like a huge wall that was all mirror. And I remember walking in and looking at myself and like see me walking in a dress. I was like, who is this person and what are they wearing? Anyway, so I learned to walk like a man because of boxers. I still wear boxers like all the time. They're comfortable. I don't know what to tell people. Yeah, then I tried the DIY binder. So I looked up some stuff online, obviously. Some people had luck with the ace bandage, even though it's very unsafe, as everybody says. I tried it, but like the first time I tried it, I realized this wasn't going to work. Um, so then I had some old tights and leggings that I cut the legs off, and I used the pelvis part, like kind of as like a bralette, but they were like tight. Um, yeah, that was kind of, it was exciting for me. I felt like I was finally like working to be trans. Um, they didn't work so great, to be honest. They weren't much better than my normal sports bras. Um, right, so now I kind of looked masculine and I was comfortable in my identity. So I started telling my friends at school one at a time. I remember my first friend, we like went on a walk after school one day, and I told her, and she came out to me as bi at the same time, and we were like, "Oh, that's so great." We hugged each other. And then my best friend, when I told her, like a week later, she gave me a bracelet that was like those kind you make at summer camp out of string, and it was like the rainbow flag. I had it until like 2 years ago. I would always have it with me. She was such a great friend. Um, I lost it, which pissed me off. And then I told my sister, same thing, she was supportive, but all of them knew that I lived in an abusive home and that I was never going to come out to my family, like while I was in high school at least. And they knew that my home life was like a disaster already, so they knew I wouldn't complicate things more. So it became, I had like this dual life at this point of like online and with my close friends, and then like at school and with my family. So I had like this dual life, which is stressful. Also for my sister, like if we were hanging out with my friends, I didn't care which name she used, but anyway, later on. Yeah, so I told my friends. Then I went to the Gay Straight Alliance at my high school, and I came out to them, and they were all super supportive, but it was the kind of thing where, like, in that room, at that lunchtime, I was Ben, and he him, and when I left, I became, like, my normal self again, because I wasn't out to everyone. Um, so finally I was, like, being trans in the real world in front of people, and I felt so inadequate. I felt like not trans enough at that point, for sure. Um, yeah. Then I met another trans man at my high school. He was a year younger than me. He also had a bunch of family problems. Um, yeah. In my video where I mentioned getting a binder, he's the one that I went to the store with to buy a binder with. Um, anyway, so it was my first real life trans person. Um, so a few months later, I think like February or January, my high school went to like this the Gay Straight Alliance from my high school went to like a conference of gay straight alliances from the whole city. So that was really cool. There was a bunch of workshops and stuff. Um, I'm just gonna mention two workshops. One workshop I went to was like a bunch of trans men, like a lot of us, sitting in a circle, which was a big deal again because I had only ever met my one friend who was trans. This was like trans people in real life. Um, and I felt like I kind of measured up because, like, I passed just as much or more than most of them. I looked like really similar to most of them. Because in my mind, I had envisioned like the buff, like trans men of YouTube. And that's not like what 15-year-old females look like when they're trans, when they're not on T. So, um, yeah. But at the first workshop, I met a trans man I'll never forget. They had a D cup boobs, which is like really big, pretty big. And they were wearing an underworks binder, and they were completely flat. And I just, if you know anything about binders, Underworks is one of the most like damaging brands um, for your like muscles and your ribs and stuff. And like, I just, that person definitely hurt themselves in the long term. Like, we were talking about how painful it is to bind, but how it was worth it because of the release that you felt when your chest was flat. Um, anyway, and then another workshop I went to was run by Morgan Page, who is a trans woman. Some of you might know her from her Overcoming the Cotton Ceiling workshop that she did at Planned Parenthood, Toronto in 2012. Anyway, so I met her at this conference, and she told me like, oh, I run a youth group for trans kids at a local community center. Like, it's on this and this day at this and this time. It's like right by the subway. You should come check it out. So you can talk about your stuff if you need to. And I was so excited because now finally my two separate lives were becoming like one more. So I started to go to that trans youth group. I wrote a piece about my experience in that youth group for Fourth Wave now. I'll put it in the description. Yeah, so I started going to that youth group. I started taking my friend from high school with me, the other trans guy, and some other friends. Yeah, that youth group was mainly older trans women. Like, there was one trans girl who was like 16 who came a bunch, but most of them were like 20s or older. I remember even this one like guy. He had like a beard and like work boots and stuff, and he would come in and he would just say like, "Oh, I identify as Sandra" or whatever, and then he would like take the free food and go sit in the corner and eat it and then leave. It was so weird. But yeah, it was mostly males there, and then a few of us trans men. And there was some weird experiences there, like being like some of the older trans women hitting on some of the younger trans men. It was weird. And then eventually we found out about like there was this public library in my city where the main the basement was like a youth center that was open like I don't know like 9 to 9 or something, and it was like an LGBT youth center. Like everything was rainbows and there was murals and there was like big posters about like respecting pronouns and all that kind of stuff. And all the people who worked there, they were super like social justice-y. Like when they would walk up to you, they would immediately ask like, "Oh, what's your name and pronouns?" And they were like, "Oh, before you touch somebody, you have to ask their consent." Like, I don't know. It was weird. It was like Tumblr came to life when I met these people. It was very strange. But yeah, so I met a bunch of people there that I never would have met otherwise. I met this like 14-year-old girl whose stepfather had raped her and she still lived with him. So she'd spend as much time as possible at the youth center. I met a 15-year-old boy who had become so violent with his parents that the Child Protective Services had actually taken him away from his parents, so he lived in a group home a few blocks away and he would hang out with us all the time. I remember buying him like A&W and Taco Bell all the time because he never had money. Oh, and then there was this 16-year-old boy who his parents threw him out because he was gay, and he had like a boyfriend who was 30-something, like 38 or something, and he lived with him. I don't know, I met a bunch of people there that I never would have met otherwise. And then at the conference, I had met a couple of non-binary, genderqueer people, but at the youth center, I met a lot of non-binary, genderqueer people. There was like a clique of them who would like bring their stuff to like work on their cosplay costumes, like together, and they literally changed their pronouns and their names like on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Like we were all super respectful and tried our best, but like when we left, we would kind of make jokes about it because it's like ridiculous. You can't like change someone's name. Like when you see their face, you recognize them. You can't change their name every week. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I spent a lot of time there. Like they had free Wi-Fi, and I didn't have to see my parents, so it seemed great to me. Then, finally, I came out on Facebook. On Facebook, the only family I'm friends with is my sister, and she's not friends with any of our other family. So I came out, and everybody at school, and everybody from my summer camps, and like all my friends I had made at like these LGBT youth groups and events and stuff, they all saw it, and they were all super supportive and nice. Like even my old music teachers, they were like, "We're so glad that you had like you're in a position to be able to come out now," and stuff like that. I remember in it I explained like why I'm trans, what does it mean to be trans. I told my friends they could ask questions, and I made like a little chart that was like female to male, and then I put myself like here, and then I made a chart that was like masculine to feminine. I put myself like here, and I put that up to like show people. Throughout most of this, I was having like a disaster of my home life, and I had a counselor through like youth services who was helping me through stuff, and so she was mostly focused on helping me through my family stuff, but once that kind of calmed down, she was like, "Okay, I'll write you a note for a doctor to get tea." So I went to the doctor, and he gave me the prescription for tea, and then I had it in my backpack for like a month because they both knew I wasn't out to my parents. So how the hell am I supposed to take testosterone? Like, as I mentioned, I had been obsessed with those YouTube transition videos, and some people, within like the first month or two, their voice drops, they get like a bad cold, they're really sweaty, they're really stinky, they're super hungry. I was like, my parents would notice this stuff. I grew up in the kind of household where like you can't get up out of bed at night to go to the kitchen, it's not allowed, that kind of thing. So it was like I can't just start taking tea and my parents won't notice. So eventually I threw away the script because it was like too tempting. But like I knew logically it was a bad idea. And then like my last step to being trans was like the medical transition, right? So my plan was I waited till after high school and waited till I moved to university, and then my plan was to like find a doctor here, and they would supervise my transition. And I just wanted tea and a double mastectomy. And my plan was like, once I moved to university, I didn't want to go home very much. I just wanted to go home like 1 week at Christmas, 1 week in the summer. And I thought, if I don't see my parents for months and then I just show up and I look like a boy, what are they going to do? What can they do? That was my plan. And I even, in my mind, I had like plans that if they were to reject me, like how I could get like more student loans and more scholarships or something. I don't know. I was prepared. But by the time I got here, I realized like everything I mentioned in this video about my outward appearance, like if you're uncomfortable with your chest, you can wear compression tank tops and stuff but not be trans. If you're uncomfortable with femininity, you can wear all men's clothes but not be trans. If you're uncomfortable, if you don't like having long hair, you can buzz your hair off. That doesn't mean you're trans. If you don't like makeup, you don't have to ever wear makeup. That doesn't mean you're trans. Like, I realized everything I was doing that made me trans in the day-to-day, I could do that stuff while accepting my femalehood. I mean, that's the short of it anyway. It was a lot of like self-exploration to do with my sexuality, stuff like that. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video to kind of explain what my journey was like, what I experienced, and to let you know, like, if you feel like you need to do these things in your life, that doesn't mean you have to be trans. Transition is a choice. If you feel uncomfortable in your gender roles, if you feel uncomfortable in your body, do what you need to do to make yourself happy and comfortable. But you don't need to change your identity and your name to do that. Yeah, that's what I have to say in this video. So if you have any ideas for future videos or any questions, put them in the comments. Also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, please visit my Patreon and give me money. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.